The emperor sat on his throne while people shouted at him that what he was doing was not fair. The girl was thrown to the ground with her hands tied while they continued to shout at the emperor about the misunderstanding. If it weren't for what she had experienced before, she would have just sat staring at him in a stupor. He, namely the emperor, was a cruel tyrant of the Reborn Empire and incredibly handsome. It was a little stained with blood, but the girl had the impression that she was looking at a picture, and his name was Janin Reborn. The red-haired man was panicking and yelling about if they even knew who he was and if they should let him go. Janin didn't care. He just stared at them like they were flies while the man sputtered that it was all one big mistake. The main character has already come to terms with her own fate unlike all the others and was quite calm, at least against their background. His other children shouted and asked for mercy, at least for their father. They were all nervous and did not know what would happen next, although they already guessed and were scared. The man took care of the children and the woman. The woman was in a panic, but her son tried to somehow calm her down, saying that he was sure that everything would be resolved now, and that there was no need to worry. The heroine looked at them as normal. She knew what they were doing, and that it was not just a misunderstanding. They were all the noble hearts family, also known to be close to the emperor. But apart from that, they were traitors who specifically drove the emperor crazy and were happy about it. And they did it with the help of their strength and skills, putting nightmares in the man's head. After that, he stopped thinking soberly. The head of the family further excused himself that he would never do such a thing in his life, but I would not dare to harm the emperor. However, the emperor did not listen to the man and ordered that his head be hung on the gate of the castle as a sign that no one would dare to harm him and the body be thrown to be torn by wild animals. Afterwards, he smiled and said that now no one would dare to harm him because he would know the sad consequences. The man continued to shout, saying that it was all a misunderstanding, and at the same time, the guard was taking him away from there amid shouts. His wife and one of his sons started screaming for him, crying and grieving, and the other brother just didn't really know how to react at all. The emperor immediately became serious and said that it was too noisy there. I would be afraid to ask him anything else, at least at that moment. But he simply ordered to kill them all. Despite the fact that the girl was the adopted daughter of the Hartz family, she was still counted among those who betrayed the emperor, and the same fate awaited her as everyone else. Unfortunately, this was her fate in this life. So although she had a brave appearance, but in reality she was shaking, I can't judge her for that. Sitting waiting for her death is not the best turn. Then one of the emperor's servants who carried out the orders approached the girl and asked him what to do with her. She just sat quietly. The man addressed the girl by name, which surprised her a little and made her automatically look up at him. The girl even thought for a moment whether she should consider it an honor that he even remembers her name. But the man did not say anything more to her personally, but simply told her briefly to kill her too and closed her eyes. Rain sat thinking that this was the end of her, and the servant already held the sword at her neck ready to strike. But at the last moment the emperor stopped the man and approached the girl sitting down next to her. He took her by the chin and said that she seemed familiar to him. Although he had never seen her before, she just looked at him in surprise. Later, he continued asking if they had never seen each other before and looking at her intently. She answered that no, that they had probably never met in this life, but she added it in her head. Then she looked into his eyes. She saw in those eyes that the man was really very tired and had been through a lot for his age, and that he was really tormented by nightmares. But even after he killed the entire Hartz family, he still felt incredible pain. In the end, he gave her some kind of bottle with something purple inside, and Rain stared at him intently. Her hands were tied, but nevertheless she took the jar and guessed that it was most likely poison. And the man confirmed this by saying that it would save her from suffering before death. The girl thanked him, and in her head she began to wonder if it was normal that she thanked him for the poison he gave her. But she ended this thought by saying that it can probably be considered mercy from the emperor, a tyrant. She began to drink the poison, thinking that this time it was all over. She began to feel death creeping up on her, but what he had said that it would take away her pain was true. She fell down thinking that such a death from a tyrant was the best way out for her, but she felt as if she was just falling asleep. The last thing she saw before death in this life was the face of a tyrant such an end. And the very next moment, she woke up at a younger age and in bed rubbed her eyes and thought about how she thought that this time, nothing like that would happen. She got up and thought about the fact that she doesn't even remember how many times this has been repeated the same morning. Exactly 7 years ago, her mother sold her to the Hartz family, as she was an illegitimate daughter of the Grey Cardinal family, and this is already her third reincarnation. Once upon a time, she lived a simple life as a student in the Republic of Korea, and had simple brown hair, not red like now. However, she had such a miserable life that she died in a car accident and remembers little of that life. And then when she woke up, she was already a girl named Rain Hartz. Of course, it all seemed unreal and completely absurd in her imagination, and she sighed heavily. She is absolutely sure that she has been here more than once and lived the same lives, and she has lived there for at least 20 years. Suddenly, they entered her room and asked if she had woken up, yet thus interrupting her train of thoughts. She was joined by her own mother, Alice Wonder, who had a very serious look. Jokes are bad with her. They looked at each other, and the girl thought that today would be the day when she would abandon her, namely, sell her to the Hartz family. Rain was even glad to see her again, and she wondered if it was because they hadn't seen each other for a long time or for some other reason. But her mother started shouting at her, saying that she warned that they had serious business today, and she was still in bed, and she asked to get up earlier. The girl quickly apologized and began to get out of bed, remembering that at this moment, her mother's nerves began to give out. The mother replied that she did not need an apology, but she needed to get up quickly and gather, and the girl did so by running to gather since she already knew that she was going to be sold. That's why she didn't see any reason to rebel and say something about it. The girl had come to terms with it a long time ago. Today, she wanted to be in that place as soon as possible. They were both going in some dark carriage to her new family. It was spring and green outside. With each rebirth, she thought about her previous life. At the moment, she looked at her mother and thought about what she was thinking and what was going on in her head. In fact, she ended up in the world of the novel and died there several times, although it was hard to believe. The main character in this novel was a second-plan heroine, Sviat. Her name was Stella. She was an incredible aristocrat who also had healing abilities. She was a lonely girl who was not loved and ignored even by her own family, which could not but be sad. But after she showed her abilities to the whole world, everyone began to pay attention to her and even threaten her. The main plot was her love affair with one of the male characters who would protect her. And our main character was a simple girl named Rain Wonder, the most important character from The Mask. All in all, quiet, modest, adopted daughter of the Hartz family who exists only behind the curtain. In her first life, she tried to kill the emperor at the behest of her family but was stopped. The family with which she lived was able to be calculated. Later, according to the plot, the emperor, who was drugged by unusual powers, began to feel something attachment and obsession with the main character of the novel. In her second life, the girl tried to stop the Hartz family, but the head of this family found out about her reincarnation and said that this time she would definitely succeed in killing the emperor. After that, her family became even more cruel than before and said that reincarnation is bullshit. But as a result, the angry emperor killed the whole family, including her, of course. The third time, it seemed to her that she could survive if she escaped from there, and it even worked for a while. But one day they came to her and captured her. As it turned out, then they captured the whole family in Hartz and brought them to the emperor. Well, here we saw at the beginning that she died with the help of poison given to her by her husband, and it happened quite recently. Now they had arrived at their destination and were about to leave, and the girl was thinking about what she must do in this life to finally survive. But she thought about the fact that she would die again at the age of 22 before the onset of winter. It was already her fourth life in the world of this novel, and she was looking through the carriage window. And this time she would like not to die, but to finally live a happy life after so many unsuccessful attempts. They stopped abruptly and the girl asked if they had already arrived, but her mother suddenly spoke to her, but reminded her to hide her eye. The girl quickly understood everything and did so. After that, they both got out of the carriage and the girl followed her mother. Later they knocked on the mansion, and the butler of the Hart's family opened the door for them and gave them an appraising look. After that, he asked the woman if it was the same child of Windren. She quickly confirmed it, and he led them through the mansion to some room, and they followed him in silence. They were brought to the head of the family, who turned to Alice Winter and said that they had not seen each other for a long time. But folding his hands under his chin, he asked if she had really brought his brother's child. And he said that they would have to wait to find out if it was definitely the child of the Hart's family. The girl who stood quietly thought that it was not the first time she had heard these terrible words. According to the plot of the novel, there were 4 main families in the Reborn Empire, namely Club, Diamond, Spade, and Hearts. All these families helped in founding the empire. Rain thought that the author had really named these families simply based on the suits of the cards. If a person had the blood of this family, then he had a certain power and characteristic. The main power of the Hart's family was everything related to dreams and the mental state of a person. The girl did not understand how such terrible people could have such abilities and who gave them away in the first place. The man continued that he had already heard love stories about her and his brother. I wonder where they came from. But he continued that he simply would not believe that his brother had slept with such a commoner as her, especially since she had come here for money and to sell a girl. The woman confirmed this, but said she had proof that the girl had family blood. He smiled mockingly and said that he was ready to look at her evidence. The mother quickly nodded to the girl, clearly talking about something. Rain understood that he wanted a mother from her and took the hand that was hiding her eye, which had a pupil in the shape of a heart, which was the symbol of their family. The man quickly understood what it meant and was even surprised to see her eye. The woman continued that she had heard from Windren that in their family, the pupil in the shape of a heart is passed down from generation to generation, and that after a certain time they have family abilities. She then began to be interested in her husband's opinion, saying that there was no way she could have faked the pupils, and that she thought that this proof was enough. The head of the family was not very pleased, and it was visible, but nevertheless asked the butler to bring money. Then the woman was ready to leave her daughter and said that she hoped that they would take good care of her. And the girl understood that in this life, as in the previous ones, they would most likely never meet her again. And her mother finally said that it didn't matter what the girl said, that this was now her new home. Rain said at the end that let her mother live and enjoy life. The woman was surprised to hear this, but did not answer anything and simply said goodbye. The girl remained standing with an unshakable expression on her face. In her 3 previous lives, she always knew that her mother had a severe and incurable disease and that she would die before winter. Therefore, she understood why her mother always brought her here. It was not a big mystery. Probably her mother just wanted to live the end of her life in solitude. But the girl herself was sure that this time she definitely wanted to survive and would do everything for it. Also, that day, Cloud had guests not only in the form of a girl because the girl knew it and had a plan and wanted to sneak quietly to the place where their meeting was held, but she thought that she still had time. In her first life, the girl just cried in the lobby. In the second and third, she tried to move very carefully and not rush. But now, everything was different, so she ran. Today was the day when the Hart's family started harming the Emperor, and it was with him and his family that they had a meeting. Therefore, the girl quickly ran to them and asked them to stop because she saw an evil force acting on the future Emperor and his brother. And he, hearing her, turned around and looked at her in surprise, holding a cup of tea. But this time, the girl purposefully tried to stop them. But when she ran up, he suddenly asked her who she was, not surprising, considering that it was her first day there. But she was stopped by the Emperor's knights with their swords, and she remembered that she didn't think that he would have bodyguards and froze in a bit of a fright while everyone looked at her. And she tried to explain something, but she didn't know how and what exactly to say and was very nervous. Also, one of the reasons why she couldn't say anything was because she met Janen's gaze and was immediately speechless. Moreover, looking at him now, she could not believe that in the future he would be called a tyrant, because now he looked quite cute, but not at all like in his older age. The head of the family looked askance at her, and she quickly remembered the eye, but hid it in a bit of fright. The boy turned to one of his knights whose name was Cheshire and told him that he saw no danger in this girl and that he should stop scaring her. The girl was nervous and the knight tried to deny something else. That guy was Janan's older brother, whose name was Tyrant, and he asked if the girl was scared. He was the first prince and should have become the emperor, but he always died before he could take the throne, sad. But his place on the throne was always occupied by his brother Janan in all her lives. The girl thought about the fact that Tyrant had left this world 3 times just like her. However, in general, this whole struggle for the throne was only because of one person, the third brother, Reborn. According to the story, Reborn was the oldest, but not at all interested in the throne, so he left this burden to the younger. But his mother, the second Empress Rossetti, wanted to put her own son on the throne regardless of her son's wishes. It was she who used the Hart's family for her own purposes. Tyrant continued and once again asked the knight to drop the sword, and the girl was seriously so scared and thought that it was too early for her to die since she had just been reborn at all. Cheshire finally lowered the sword and Rain noticed that it was most likely a hybrid as it had cat ears and looked like a tabby cat. The other was smiling and told Cheshire not to be so serious and relax at last. The one who said it shone like a sun. The girl looked at both of them and thought that they both looked somehow strange and whether they were knights, but one of the brothers still asked that it was all cool, of course, but what kind of girl was this? The wife of the head of the family replied that she was seeing her for the first time and asked her husband if he had hired a new maid, but he remained silent. His other 2 sons and daughter also did not understand what was happening and who she was, and became interested in all this. The girl stood uncertainly thinking about the fact that she herself was not very happy about becoming their half-sister. But what can you do? Tyrant leaned over to her and asked if she was sometimes injured, and she answered that she was not, and everything was fine. And she thought about the fact that the guy was very nice and still treated her well, even after hearing that she was a maid. But there was a lot of devilish energy around him, and it was not a very pleasant observation of her. But magic had already taken root, which meant that at this rate it would die in less than 2 years, which definitely did not suit her. The diabolical magic of nightmares was the magic of Solani. It allowed to insert nightmares into a person's dreams and thereby drive him crazy. And today, Tarina was introduced to another nightmare, but only the first one was planned for Janan. The guy asked again whose child it was, and the man answered not very enthusiastically that it was their new adopted daughter. Here his wife exploded and began to ask what he meant and why she did not know. He simply looked away from her. Then and again I asked him what he meant and how he was adopted, and the girl saw a great moment to do something. She began to catch the nightmare that was on the boy because she knew that she could absorb some of the nightmares and thereby improve his well-being. But she was quickly asked what she was doing. A security guard started to approach her, and she quickly smiled and said that he had some kind of bug on his shoulder, and she took it away. But in general, she was upset because due to her small growth, she could not do all this imperceptibly. The head of the family apologized for her and said that she just doesn't have the right manners yet, and he just smiled and said that there were no problems. The girl stood a little awkwardly, but nevertheless she was satisfied that she managed to stop the nightmare and get out of the water dry. After several lives she realized that she has such an ability, absorption of nightmares and dreams in general, but that ball that she got and was part of the boy's nightmare. However, she didn't know how much it would help him if she ate that nightmare, but she was willing to try and risk it. The ball tasted awful, but she couldn't spit it out because then it would go back to the owner, that is Prince Tyrant, but it hurt her so much. At that moment Janan noticed her and looked at her with interest in silence, and she looked at him in return. And also she was very scared that he could see how she ate that nightmare and did not know what to do. He began to approach her little by little, and the girl stood trying to think that he should not go to her under any circumstances and not speak. The boy looked a little angry, and she worried that he would not be angry with her, but his brother approached the boy and asked if something had happened, and the girl worried that she would not be punished for doing something suspicious. When he approached, she closed her eyes and was worried, but he gave her some kind of wrapped package. Chim greatly surprised the girl, and she asked what it was, with a surprised expression on her face. He put this package in her hand and told her to take it, but at first she didn't know what to answer, but then she accepted it anyway. But after she took it, he said it would taste better than air and crossed his arms. Tyrant laughed, asking what he meant, and the girl realized that he thought she was so hungry that she was eating air. Then he blushed, turned away, and said that he doesn't like sweets very much, so he decided to give it to her. She thought that he probably didn't like much. And then she began to wonder why, if he does not like sweets, he took cookies with him all the way from the imperial palace. Still, she thanked him for them, but thought it was rather ironic that in one day she already thanked this man twice, and the first time it was for poison, and the second time for cookies. They stood in silence a little longer, and Janin said that it was probably time for them to go otherwise. If his brother was outside for too long, he might get a fever again. He agreed and said that it was really time for them to go, and he was smiling at the same time. It was obvious that even though Janin didn't show much emotion, he really cared about Tyrant a lot. It was cute. Before that, she didn't know that they had such a good relationship, and in the future, these two brothers will be destroyed because of the Hart's family here. Cloud also spoke and asked if they were already leaving and why so early. Rain didn't know if she could help Tyrant anymore, but she was going to do everything in her power to help Janin stay safe from her family's evil plan. She was ready to do everything for this and try very hard to make sure that the Emperor was good and not a tyrant, at least in this life. She wanted to stop the main male character from becoming a tyrant, and thus the girl would finally be able to survive because she was tired of constant reincarnations. When they had already left, the man shouted at the girl, saying why she went there at all and whether she had completely lost her mind. The girl excused herself by saying that her mother was spending time, and then she got lost and ended up there with them. He complained that she had just arrived, but she already caused so many problems and asked to be more careful next time. She replied sadly that she would try and make sure it wouldn't happen again. Here the husband's wife burst in with her characteristic scream for the whole mansion. She began to ask what was going on here, and he began to explain that he once mentioned that there was a girl who might turn out to be his brother's daughter. Ta told the woman not to worry, as Rain would be working for them, and asked if that was true, though not that she had a choice. Therefore she said yes, but the woman continued to mutter something under her breath in displeasure. But she didn't hear that anymore because the man told Jack, who was the butler, to show her to her room, and they went from there. However, on the way out, she still heard that the woman did not like her, and they were talking something about her father's death. And Cloud said that you need to see the good, and maybe she will have good power so that they can use it. When Rain found herself in her room, she felt bad because she had already forgotten how horrible nightmares taste and what side effects they had after them. The girl did not even imagine how the boy could endure everything, even with a smile. The girl thought that she would not be able to endure such a thing, but she must prepare because now she will face many trials. For example, the fact that after 10 days she could not show her abilities, and her husband got angry and locked her in the basement, saying that he did not understand what such a half-breed was doing in their family. He shouted at her, saying that she doesn't have any abilities and she doesn't know how to use them, and that it was all for nothing. Then he left her alone, and she understood that everything was happening in the same way as in the novel itself. But in fact, she had been waiting for this moment for a long time, and thought that she would die from waiting upstairs. The girl had already managed to come up with a plan. Now she will be able to act much more aggressively. If they didn't care about her now, she would be ready for battle, and smiled lightly. Everything was going the way Cloud wanted it. He was yelling at her that they weren't family anymore, and to call him master, and to do something about her horrible red hair. And others knew everything in such a way that the daughter of the Hart's family was terminally ill and did not appear in public precisely because of this. More precisely, such rumors began to spread throughout the empire. A year passed, she covered her eye with a patch and changed her hair color to blonde, and generally became a simple maid for the Hart's family. When Rain walked along the corridor, she heard how the senior maid scolded the other one for breaking the dessert that Madame had been waiting for a long time, and he was apologizing. She understood that it was a dessert for Salani, and remembered that it must be from the bakery, which was quite far away, but the boy looked very unskilled. Therefore, she approached the woman and said that she could go get him herself and asked why she... But Rain assured her that the dessert would be delivered quickly and she didn't need to worry. And since the boy looked insecure, it would not be the best idea to entrust him with such a matter. The woman agreed with this and sent the girl away. The boy stood there for a while and was awkwardly silent. In the end, the woman told the girl to run for dessert and she quickly agreed, and they agreed on that. But at the end, she added that the girl should not leave anything at times come quickly and not be late. When the senior maid left, the boy approached her and sincerely thanked her. The girl replied that there were no problems. Then she saw that something was tangled in the boy's hood and wanted to fix it while the boy panicked. But she still managed to remove the hood and see that the boy had rabbit ears. She froze for a moment and realized that he was a pointed rabbit, and was surprised since hybrids have never worked in the Hart's family. He quickly hid his ears behind his hood, and the girl remembered that hybrids were treated badly in this world as an inferior race, so they hid it. So Rain quickly started to say that she didn't mean to and wouldn't tell anyone and to apologize. He replied that everything is fine since many people already know about him. But then he smiled and added that the girl can address him informally because he knows who she is. The girl waved her hands and said that she was just a maid too, so let them both address each other informally, and started the introduction by saying her name was Rain, and asked his name. The boy smiled lightly and sweetly while holding the hood and said that his name was Mahmud. That's how we met. Although it bothered her to see Mahmud here, she had more important things to do while she had a chance to go outside. She was looking at some letter and understood that she was starting the first chance operation. The girl wanted to join the guild, and now because of this she needed to change her image, because in the mansion she was known as a blonde with a closed eye. Therefore, when she left the mansion, she hid the wig and the headband in her bag, because she could not allow the rumors about the Hart's family servant who was in the guild to spread. Therefore, she had to go there looking like she really is. When she entered, she immediately began to ask what she was doing here, and whether she had lost something. Not very nice people there, to be honest. But she walked up to the bar and said she was a customer and came here to meet Rosella Heyer, the leader of the Black Heart Guild. One woman looked at her intently, while the others thought that since she was a client and also wanted to meet the leader, she was completely confused. So this woman was the leader and told Rain to go because she was not so pathetic as to take money from a child. But the girl stood her ground and said that she could give something more for the money and asked if the woman was troubled by nightmares. And because of the fact that she has nightmares, she cannot relax and fills her fatigue with alcohol. Rosella was surprised and asked where she knows all this, but she was clearly more interested than at the beginning. In fact, she just met her in a past life, but the girl couldn't say that, so she replied that it didn't matter now. In her past life, she had met this woman through the Hart's family business, but now things were different now. Rain offered to take her nightmares away if she was interested. The woman herself was interested, but others around her said that it was all untrue and that the girl should be expelled from here. Nevertheless, the leader stood up and asked what she wanted in return for her help. The girl replied that she needed to know everything related to the imperial palace. The woman pondered, comparing all the pros and cons. Although this was a rather serious request, the woman was a professional, so she would be able to do it as soon as possible and would not refuse. Since her mental state was already on edge, she didn't have much of a choice and agreed with the rest. The girl smiled, pleased with herself, because she knew that it would be so, and the woman asked how to address their new client. Rain thought about the fact that she had to give a name, but it was not possible to introduce herself, so she decided to use her mother's name, namely Alice. After a few years, everything went as it should. Letters from the guild were sent to her secretly, and she read them. And in one of these notes, it was written that Prince Tyrant had fainted for unknown reasons. And in general, the prince was in a coma for the 3rd year in the same state when you are neither alive nor dead. And as a result, as always, his place was taken by his brother Janin, who became the new emperor. And he also announced that he wanted to take part in the war that was going on somewhere. However, There was no news that he was losing his mind. The girl thought that she was able to mess with her family's plan and save the boy. She reflected on the fact that this life was very different from all previous ones, since she was able to live this long, which was already a victory. In this way, 7 years passed, the girl grew up, and in principle lived a fairly simple life. In 6 months, she would be 22 years old, and if all went well, she would finally be free. That heroine would finally be able to enjoy her own life. Because if Janin is not hurt, then nothing threatens her and she will have the opportunity to live peacefully. And at least she put it on. She was going to enter the guild and thought that she would like to look at him at least once and see what he was like. The girl reached for the handle, thinking that the boy must have looked great if he was no longer suffering from nightmares. But suddenly the same emperor appeared in front of her, who was dressed in jewelry and did not look as healthy as she imagined him to be. They went in different directions, but she stood in a stupor for some time, not understanding what just happened. After she regained consciousness, the girl realized that it was Janin and did not understand why he looked so bad and was generally in such a strange state. Rain couldn't resist and shouted for him to stop at least for a moment, and she was almost scared herself. The guy stopped, was silent for a moment, and asked what it was and what was needed from him. He looked very tired and not very happy that something was wanted from him. She could see that he was completely engulfed in gentle nightmares, but the worst part was that she didn't understand why or how. The girl looked at him silently and did not understand how this was even possible. The boy replied that if she did not need anything from him, he would better leave. The heroine quickly panicked and told him to wait. She understood that if she didn't help him now, he would soon lose his mind altogether, and it would be too late. The girl grabbed his cape in the hope of detaining him, but the first thing that came to her mind was to ask if he believed in miracles. He looked at her as if she were abnormal. She noticed it too, but couldn't do anything about it, as it was the only thing that came to her mind. So she went on to say that she could see that he couldn't sleep properly lately, and his mind was clouding. Considering the fact that it was true the guy was very interested in it, well, he was taking everyone on a trick. Rain went on to say that he was having dreams that he couldn't remember, and the line between reality and the mainstream was blurring. His heart is always pounding hard, and his head is always bursting with pain. Here the boy was looking at the girl in complete shock. But the girl did not stop and continued to describe the symptoms that when he goes to sleep he is afraid that he will wake up a completely different person. Here, the emperor stopped her and asked if it would be easier for him if he believed in a miracle. The girl smiled a little awkwardly and was glad that she could at least get his attention, but she didn't know what to say to him. She knew that the phrase, "Do you believe in miracles?" is hard to resist even in this world where there is literally magic among other things. The heroine, as a regular customer, approached the bar counter and asked if she could use one of the free rooms, and he just followed her. And she also added that they would like a room at the end with good sound insulation. The guy behind the counter, whose name was Benjamin, was a little shocked by such a request. He started to say something to her there, but then they stopped and asked who she was with anyway, and the girl got her key, and she just took the key and said that they were not for long and she would return it soon. He wanted to say something else, but it didn't come to that. She and the boy had already left, and at the end she added that he should make sure that no one went to them. The man shouted, asking what they were going to do there anyway. The girl blushed and said that it was nothing like that. In the end, they entered the room, and here the boy also asked her if she was going to do strange things, and the girl again answered in the negative. Rain made the boy sit down and began to ask how long this had been going on, his inability to sleep, and he asked if she shouldn't already know that. The girl panicked and began to say that of course she knew all this. She thought about how to instill confidence in him and make him relax. At first she decided to ask him to close his eyes, but told him to relax, not worry, and generally feel comfortable. She put her hand on his forehead and said that no one will hurt him here. He also closed his eyes. The heroine said that she takes away bad thoughts from him and those that cause anxiety. The guy started talking nonsense, asking how she does it. But he definitely began to feel better and was very surprised by this, and even finally managed to doze off. He dozed off so that he fell on top of the girl, who was not ready for this, but there was nowhere to turn. She held him and thought about the fact that she didn't even know how long he couldn't fall asleep on his own due to nightmares. The girl placed him on the sofa again and took his hand, thinking that the method she wanted to use was much more convenient than taking away nightmares with balls. The method was that she kissed his hand and rejoiced that her powers could help the emperor. But at one point he suddenly woke up, but did not understand what he was and where he was, and the boy was on the girl's lap, but he tried to remember when he fell asleep. The guy continued to lie and look at the girl, who also dozed off and leaned a little on her side. But he had even more questions about why he was lying on her lap, on the lap of a person he was literally seeing for the first time. The emperor thought that this girl was strange because he couldn't resist the touch of her hand, and it was strange. He touched her hand and did not understand why the touch of this particular girl did not make him nervous as it did with all the others. The guy admitted to himself that he liked the girl's touch, which was already a miracle. But an even greater miracle was that he did not even remember the last time he slept so well. And finally the girl began to wake up. She looked at the boy to see that he was already awake and said that she wanted to wake him up sooner, but he was sleeping so well that she decided to wait a little. She smiled brightly and apologized to him for that. The guy thought about it but asked how long he slept. The girl answered that 10 minutes in total. The guy stood up and was surprised that for only 10 minutes, since he felt quite energetic and rested, the girl was just smiling from the side. But she added that it wouldn't hurt him to rest like he did today and explained that she moved him to the bed for comfort. The emperor was thinking that he never gets a good rest. When he closes his eyes, terrible scenes appear in front of him that drive him crazy. And he thanked the girl for the fact that together with her, he was finally able to rest at least a little and felt comfortable. And he was really surprised that he was able to relax and sleep so well with someone. But the girl replied that she had not done anything like that, and it was a miracle. The emperor was surprised and said that he had not heard anything about him, while Rain began to explain that he could not know everything at first, and she would initiate him periodically. The boy pondered and thought that when he returned to the castle, he would have to look for something else about this miracle. The girl stood up and said that they would see each other next time if such an opportunity still had the right to exist. The guy was not satisfied with this option, so he decided that it might be better to agree on this next meeting. He was in such a situation for the first time and asked himself if he really did not want to meet this suspicious woman again. She replied that she did not even know, but she said that if they are destined to meet again, they will definitely meet again. When the emperor had already left there, he met one of his knights who asked if everything would be all right. He replied that he did and asked his opinion about what he had seen. This knight's name was May. He was also a talkative rabbit and said that the girl definitely had some kind of magical power, but she wasn't demonic or evil. The emperor was surprised, but replied that it was good, then asked to be careful with the guild and learn as much as possible about the girl. The boy bowed and said he would do his best. And the emperor himself thought about the fact that he does not believe in fate, but if he needs it, what will you do? He had no choice but to believe her after meeting our charming girl. The girl thought about the fact that she was able to calm the fire for a certain time, but she does not understand how it appeared in the first place, and when it was cursed. But she learned something else, which was that she gained another power in this life, which was that her body was impervious to other curses or other people's abilities. Yes, she can neutralize someone else's magic by swallowing it, but after that she will have very strong consequences, the same as a person with nightmares. And she could not show her pupil in the form of a heart for anything, so only she knew about it and always hid it. In this way, she secretly interfered in the affairs of the Heart's family, but her skills were still not enough to block Soloanye's power, so she needed a plan. One day when she was in the corridor, Solani stood next to her and looked as if she wanted to talk, surprising the girl because she usually just passed by. The girl did not know what to say, so she simply asked how the lady was doing. But she shouted for the girl not to say anything and not to get on her nerves. Well, it happens. The girl noticed that her sister was a little too emotional today, so she decided that it would be better to just leave quietly, so she said goodbye, wished her a good day, and was ready to go on, but she was stopped, and the red-haired girl asked if she sometimes spoke to her father and looked a little angry. Rain didn't understand at first, but she continued asking if she sometimes hides some secret conspiracies from her, and looked at her suspiciously. The heroine began to object, saying that the owner often calls her to his office, but they don't talk about anything like that. But there she was, already angry, and started shouting at the girl, accusing her and asking if she thought she was stupid at all. However, her brother came to her from behind and took her by the shoulder, asking what was happening here and saying all this with a smile. The girl panicked and began to deny everything, saying that they did not say anything like that. And the heroine thought about this brother whose name was Snow. It was very difficult to understand what was on his mind. The eldest son of the Hart's family in his past life, he was very quiet and inconspicuous, but in this one he behaves very strangely and a little compulsively. Rain understood that it was better not to cross paths with him too much for her own good and peace. They had already dropped the subject, and Snow told the girl to go to their father, much to her surprise. The sister looked at the girl and then ran to her brother, asking him if her father sometimes called her. He did not know what to answer, and the heroine thought that Solani was really jealous of her father. In the end, she left shouting at the end that Rain would never dare again, and that she had had enough. The girl just smiled because she didn't even say anything to her, but decided that it was better to remain silent. Suddenly, a boy approached her and said that the girl had better not come into contact with Solani in the near future. She looked at him questioningly. The same explained that they have exams now, and that's why his sister is now in the platoon, and he smiled. He always smiles. The heroine was surprised because she did not remember that all three had ever taken any exams at all. But what can you do? The guy smiled slyly and asked if she was interested. I wouldn't trust him. The girl also didn't like this decision very much and called it disgusting, but of course she didn't say it out loud. However, Snow has already started talking about the fact that a couple of days ago, their father gathered everyone and said that there will be exams to choose who will be the head of the family in the future. Surprised, the girl thought and remembered that in the past, Rune was always the head, and this time it was the exams. But she guessed that most likely the conclusion would be because of their skills, and Solani is very bad at controlling them at the moment. That's why she is angry. And the girl said that it was her hand. The guy went on to say that he does not want to take the place of the head of the family at all, but for him, this whole struggle looks funny, so he decided to take part and asked to support him. Rain agreed, but in her head she thought that what he said was true and that he was already fed up with her. After all, she said that it was probably time for her to go to the owner, and the boy looked at her a little disappointed. However, without thinking for a long time, he grabbed her hand and then pulled her completely to him until the girl did not understand what was happening. But he began to whisper something in her ear, and it was about the fact that slaves and animals should not be friends, and it was not up to him to decide. Our girl is smart and quickly understood that he was talking about her and Mahmud. She was frightened and asked what he was talking about and told him to let her go. The girl was clearly nervous. The guy looked scared and said that he advises it all in her own interests and finally let him go. But at the end, with a mocking smile, he added that if she continued to go with them, she would lose her already low status. At the first opportunity, the girl quickly hid behind the door of some room and thought that it was strange as hell. She thought that compared to the others, this life was the most normal. Jainin hadn't gone crazy yet. She had relative freedom, and the Hart's family was moving very slowly to cause much damage. But despite everything, I could not breathe calmly, and some very strange things happened in this life. But Rain tried to calm down quickly and not think about it, at least now. In any case, she could only hope that the Hart's family wouldn't have time to do something. Meanwhile, the emperor was sitting and writing some documents when he suddenly came across the festival and began to ask if everything could be cancelled. In response, I heard an objection and an argument in the form of the fact that they have already postponed this festival several times and can no longer postpone it, and not only the aristocracy will be outraged, but also the whole people. Next, our genius emperor had idea number 2, namely that he should find some native country with which they could start a war, and because of this ban the festival. But Cheshire replied that he doubted there were any virgin lands near them for that. Here the emperor became serious and asked if he couldn't do whatever he wanted anyway. He was the one who made the boy a knight. Cheshire replied that he thought he was doing a great job and that he had specifically put him in this position to do such things. And at the end he said that he was just doing his job, and the emperor just kept silent because he had nothing to say about it, but he could only call it boring. He felt tired again, but remembered that he hadn't rested normally for 15 days since the moment he saw the girl and really thought about starting some kind of war. The emperor had nightmares and insomnia. His instincts did not give him peace, so he could not even lie down for a long time. And people called this state of his curse of Selena. For the first time, such a disease was found in his mother. Empress Selena, she suffered for a long time and died as a result. After her, due to the same disease, his brother also died, or rather fell into a coma. And after that, the boy realized that soon it would be his turn. And his premonition was true, although this disease was called Selena's curse. But in reality, it was not a curse. But no one managed to solve this disease, as well as for what reason and why it appeared at all. But despite that, that girl was able to get him to rest and calm down and take those horrible nightmares away from him. He really wanted to meet her again and feel the same peace, that short sleep, soft atmosphere, and sweetness that appeared on his lips. Now we return to the Hart's family, where Selene was yelling again. She loves this job about Rune saying something and asking her to shut up. So I answered calmly, saying that he was telling the truth and why she was so angry with her. He asked about when she would finally be able to control her abilities if she was unable to do anything if necessary. The girl became very angry and bit her lip. Rain didn't understand anything, and before that she was simply told to change her clothes and come to the dining room, and here it is. And just after her, Cloud came with Snone, who asked about what was happening there and what the sounds were. Finally, he told everyone to calm down and take their seats, which they all did. Except for Rain, who didn't think she had to sit down either, so she was very surprised that she had to do it too. Nevertheless, she sat down at the table, not knowing whether she had been invited to eat with them, or what she was shocked that she had been invited at all. But she thought that if she ate any of it, she would probably get poisoned. So they all sat at the table, and the girl clearly felt out of place because at least she was not used to being here. She was very nervous and wondered if she would ever be able to eat normally in this house because she was already insecure. Selene turned to her father and brother and asked why they had come together and whether they were talking about something special. Ruin here supported the girl and said that it was unfair if they talked about something important without them. The heroine also thought that it was somehow strange and why the owner decided to meet with Snone in the first place. But the boy replied that they did not talk about anything like that and that they should not worry for nothing. He was simply answered with a nod. Here the head of the family spoke and said that they were just talking to him about the ball in the imperial castle and nothing more. The heroine thought and really remembered that the anniversary of the founding of the empire was coming soon. The man went on to say that the examination for establishing the head of the family would be conducted fairly and they could not worry about it. At that moment, the girl just sat and thought, what is she doing here, considering that she would not be made the head of the family in any case? But it seemed to her that he looked in her direction, so it was a sign. In the last few days after that dinner, the atmosphere in the house had changed a lot, and the girl tried to think that the look in her direction meant nothing. She also thought that it might have something to do with Janin, and it all confused her greatly. She still had the feeling that something was bound to happen in this life. She really wanted to believe that it was just a bad feeling and nothing more. One day she went to the guild again and asked if they were sure that she had been giving the correct information all these 7 years. The person she was talking to said that she was questioning the professionalism of their guild. The girl denied, but said that she thought they missed something. With the rest, the girl said that it didn't matter, but the question remained open how exactly the Hart's family managed to instill these nightmares in Janin. During all this time, Selene and the Emperor did not meet, which means that she could not have the opportunity to use her abilities on him. But then what happened? Then she asked if the person behind the counter remembered the guy she was with once she was told that they did. Rain asked if he hadn't come here yet. She was told no, the girl sighed. Even after the day she met the boy, the feeling that she was being followed did not leave her. It was not pleasant. Fortunately, at least one of the advantages of having heart's blood was that she had a good sense of these things, and she also had the opportunity to hide her existence in other people's thoughts. She thought Janin would come here to find her again, though maybe because she took the nightmare from him, he forgot all about it. And they asked her what kind of man it was, and that it was better for him not to come here again. They were very hospitable. But as soon as you remember the devil, he will come, and this prodigal son came all sweaty and in a bad state and started walking towards the girl. They started shouting at him from behind the counter, asking who he was, but the girl stopped Botan and said that everything is fine. Janin took her hand and quoted her words that if they were destined to meet, they would definitely meet again, and smiled. The girl looked at him and thought that fate had brought them together again. And he very sweetly asked her for help to fall asleep, but where should the girl go? So they went back into the room, and she took his hand and kissed it using her powers. She almost felt sick from the darkness of his nightmares, and her eyes began to blur. She did not understand how the boy was holding himself. But the man quickly passed out and fell on the girl's shoulder completely without strength, even if it is not clear when he slept there for the last time. Rain was again surprised at how quickly he fell asleep, and wondered if it was even normal for him to sleep in that position. It wasn't hard to see that he looked much worse than the last time she thought that he couldn't sleep again for a long time, and the nightmares only got worse. Also, while he was lying on top of her, she saw the wounds on his hands, and they interested her. The girl began to worry that he had harmed himself, and wanted to take a closer look at the wounds. She thought that she did not know how long she would be able to live if he still wanted to kill himself. However, while she was doing this, the boy suddenly opened his eyes and looked very emotionless and frightening. It scared her a lot because not even 10 minutes had passed and she didn't know how to react. When she calmed down, she started apologizing, saying that she didn't want anything like that, took her hands away from him, and just wanted to look at his wounds, and this was all a misunderstanding. However, then she stopped and thought that he looked somehow very strange, not as usual, and did not respond to her at all. The girl looked into his eyes. She remembered those eyes that wanted blood, the kind that wanted to kill someone. Only she thought about it, and the boy's hands already reached for her neck and wanted to squeeze her. Rain was ready enough that she was able to push him over and thought about not wanting to do it. But she had one method which she put aside for the extreme case that now appeared. And she started kissing him, thereby taking away his nightmares and all the pain she could. The closer the contact, the greater the effect of her ability, and she was also very bitter about the darkness of his nightmares. But she didn't want to do it before then, as it might not be the best method for her or him. But this time the nightmares were too strong and dark, and the desire that haunted him was the desire to die. Rain understood that the boy had lost everything, and wanted to finally be done with it all. She felt very sorry for him. However, she did her best now, so she got up and coughed a little, and now just sat on the side. She still got nervous and started apologizing to the sleeping boy, saying that he was to blame because he attacked her and she was just defending herself. That is self-defense. The girl understood that he had just literally lost his sanity and was trying to kill her, but surprisingly she was not scared at all. And if there was someone else in her place, she would not have been able to do the same. Then Rain thought that maybe because the boy had died so many times, he was haunted by an obsessive desire to end his own life. It would be sad if it turned out to be true. The girl started playing with his hair and thought that he had a difficult fate and wondered what awaits them both in this life. Here, the girl herself caught herself touching his hair and quickly took her hand away from him. She had many thoughts at that moment, but the one thing she thought about the most was how soft his hair was. Therefore, later, she started touching his hair again and forgot about everything else. At that moment, it seemed that there was nothing more important. Over time, the boy opened his eyes and the girl asked with a smile how he slept. He was silent at first, and then he started to get up and asked when he managed to fall asleep at all, because he did not remember it. In the end, he asked the girl how long he slept. She answered that this time it was more than 30 minutes, not 10. But the reason he was able to sleep more was because she had taken more nightmares from him than last time. The man nodded, and it seemed to him not really that the girl looked more tired than before. Then he looked at her, and the girl, a little confused, asked what it was and why he was looking at her like that. Then he decided to ask a question that is generally asked at the first meeting, but let it be. So he asked her name. She got a little nervous and asked if he really wanted to know her name. He confirmed it. At first the girl wanted to say Rain, but in the process changed her mind and called herself Alice and smiled. The man said her name and said that it was strange, but she asked in her head what exactly was strange, and was it so obvious that it was not her real name? Janin thought about it and said that he didn't think the name suited her very well. The girl was shocked that he just told her that, but at least he didn't guess about it yet. That's a plus. In response, the girl also decided to ask what his name was. Of course she knew his name, but she thought that he probably uses an alias when he leaves the castle. As it turned out, no, and he simply said directly that his name was Janin, thereby surprising the girl who did not expect to hear his real name, and he asked to be called that. Rain was shocked that the emperor of an entire empire simply introduced himself by his real name to a person whom he had seen for the second time in his life. He saw that the girl was reacting strangely and asked if she had any problems. She denied and decided that it was better to be careful so that there were no incidents. But she was surprised that he really does not use a pseudonym and decided to offer him to use it. But she explained to him that in such places as guilds, it is better to use a pseudonym instead of a real name. He thought for a moment. And then he gave out the diamond, saying that maybe Janin is his alias. She asked if it was true, and in general the level of getting out of the situation was 100 out of 100. Then he thought more and told her to call him just Jay, and they sat down so sweetly. Our girl is perceptive, so she saw in his eyes that they were directly telling her to call him by his name. She did so, calling him Jay, and he smiled and beamed. Rain was glad he was feeling better, but at the end he added that she can address him informally. And the girl was shocked because literally only that the emperor asked to address him informally. This is the level I understand. The heroine thanked him politely, but said that they were probably not close enough yet for her to address him informally. The man said that this is already their second meeting, and he thinks that this is enough. He quickly makes friends. Now she was like a rabbit and did not know how to react to this and what to answer him. Rain, nevertheless, switched to informal communication, albeit with some difficulties, and asked if he was now satisfied. Jay was very pleased and smiled sweetly, calling her Alice. And then out of nowhere he offered her to work for him, which shocked the poor girl for the first time. The girl began to get nervous and did not know what to answer, and the guy said that he would definitely not deprive her of money. She replied that it wasn't about the salary, although it would be nice to have money. The husband continued that he could make her a miracle with religion, but she was already on the verge. And there's another thing then. She began to ask what this carries in general, but he did not give up and said that if she agreed to work for him, he would do anything for her, a tempting offer, I must say. Rain thought for a moment and, looking at him, asked if he was telling her the truth. The girl was thinking about whether it would work if she asked him not to kill her in 6 months, and she didn't fully understand why he decided to confess that he was the emperor. He then asked if she still wanted to agree and asked what exactly she needed. She started to answer something, but suddenly Rosella flew up to them and asked if she had just witnessed a marriage proposal. Rain looked back at the woman who had just entered, who simply replied that she had heard something interesting was going on within her guild. The girl froze and didn't know how long she had been standing there, and the woman continued that Alice could not marry him because she was a very dear member of their family. But the boy quickly put everything in its place and said that he was talking to Alice after all. And they had a visual fight, lightning from the eyes, and that's all. The girl tried to somehow calm it all down and offered everyone to calm down, but she was quickly silenced and asked not to get inside. Rain didn't understand why they were telling her not to interfere if they were all here because of her, and they continued their visual sparring. But eventually Rosella sighed and said that if he needed Alice so much, he could contact her through her, And the man asked what she meant in general, but the woman did not answer and said that she did not recommend him to make any secret meetings with her. And even if the guy tries to contact Alice without Rosella's knowledge, he will never see her again at all. And she smiled. That's what I understand the family. And at the end she added that she hoped that they understood each other. Then the girl was already going back to the mansion and thought about how incredible a woman Rosella is. I completely agree. She told the boy that if he tried to deal with her himself, he would be fined 10,000 gold. The man quickly agreed and had no objections while the girl in the photo was out and about. But she didn't understand why he agreed to everything so easily. And didn't this money mean anything to him? But in the end, she scored and decided that she deserved a rest, and anyway, a lot of strange things happened today. The girl just wanted to rest and not think about anything and was going to go to her room. When she suddenly noticed a guest in the form of Snow, there was little joy in meeting him, to be honest, so the girl was not delighted. He stood leaning against the wall with folded hands, but asked if she had returned and looked at her suspiciously. Rain replied that she did and asked if he needed anything from her and what he was doing here anyway. The young man replied that he came here to ask her something. The girl asked what exactly, and he answered that he would like to invite her to a ball in the imperial castle and asked how she viewed it. She will be shocked that she was invited there, and after that she will understand that the wonder is not over for today. Then she turned and saw another brother and sister, and wondered how long they had been eavesdropping on them, those two looking at her as if they had seen a ghost. Rain got a little nervous and said that there must have been some misunderstanding. The girl never knew what Snow was thinking, but what was happening now did not fit into any framework, and she did not understand anything at all. The heroine did not understand why Cloud decided to count her among family members. For one reason or another, it was just funny. And at the expense of the imperial palace, she had never been to such events at all. So she told the boy that she did not even have an invitation. Nevertheless, the guy did not give up and asked if she would go with him then. As a +1, the girl was still not sure about it. But she said that she would think about it. The boy asked if it was true, and the girl began to feel some kind of thievish atmosphere. And after that, he took out the letter of invitation from his jacket and said that his father gave permission, and it was an invitation to her real name. She tried to be calm, but in her head, she did not understand what was happening here. The young man continued that his father said that she had better attend the ball well if he had already given her an invitation. Then it is serious. Snow smiled and asked again if he could accompany her to the ball. After that, the girl left and tried to understand what this old man was up to and what kind of plan he had. Rain remembered what she said she would think, but later remembered the look on the boy's face and the way he crossed his arms that gave her goosebumps. She understood that if she didn't go, she would be in trouble, and wondered if she could handle what was waiting for her at the ball, especially since in this life, she couldn't even understand what Snowhearts was hiding behind his smile, and that scared her the most. While she stood thinking, Solani approached her and addressed her. The girl did not even shout, but simply offered to go to the ball together, as she heard that there was an invitation. This completely finished the girl, who no longer understood what else strange could happen in one day. Being in shock, she even informally turned to Solani, but she did not understand why. From being aggressive and angry, she became kind and smiling. The girl asked that she go to the ball with her, and that she would teach her everything, and that leaving her was much better than going with her brother. And at the end she added that all the Moor girls should always stick together. The heroine did not even know what to answer to this and did not have time to come to her senses yet. The other girl went on to say that if she went with her, she would be able to introduce her to all the young aristocrats. Then she started asking if the girl had already decided with whom she would go, but she quickly started running away from there. I can't judge her. And Rain said in parting that she still needed to think. She barely managed to escape and stood by the fountain breathing in an effort to calm down. The heroine did not understand what was happening in this mansion when she was suddenly addressed. It was Rune who was sitting on the tree and said that the girl was running fast and started to say something about what a nice day it is. But of course he knew that the girl had already received an invitation from his two brother and sister. The girl looked at him in shock and thought that now he would walk down the same path as the others today. Of course it was, so he also started talking about the idea of going with him because he will definitely become the head of the family. Rain did not listen and began to run away again. The boy shouted where she should go, but she did not stop. The guy was left alone, but he didn't understand how she could just run away in the middle of a conversation, shattering all his dreams. When she was already safe, she began to complain that they were all crazy. Muchman tried to calm her down and gave her some water. She thanked him in return, trying to calm down. After she drank, the boy asked her what she was thinking now, and she thought for a moment. She began to explain that she was invited to a ball in the Imperial Palace. The guy asked if there was a reason to worry as much as she did. I thought about it and decided that the guy was right, and the main problem now is not the ball, but Cloud Hearts. She did not understand why he suddenly decided to send her to the ball. The girl sat down on a chair and asked in her ear what he was thinking. The young man just looked at her in surprise. He was a little nervous, but said that he saw no reason to be so worried and thought that everything would be fine. He asked if she had to be at the ball, to which she nodded in the affirmative. Muchman said that unfortunately he wouldn't be able to go with her, so he wouldn't be able to help her in any way. Rain thanked him anyway and said that she wouldn't want to go there at all. Afterwards, she smiled and thanked the boy again and said that she was glad that he cared and she really appreciated it. They smiled at each other and offered her more water. The girl agreed and then thought about what she should do with all this. She couldn't help but go to the ball, and because of that it would be better for her to go with one of them to reduce the chance of unpleasant situations. Rain held her chin and thought about who would be best to leave with out of all of them. The contenders included Snownrune and Solani Hearts. However, in reality, the girl perfectly understood that she did not want to go there with any of them, but there was no choice. Suddenly, the girl covered her mouth and the boy worriedly began to ask if everything was okay with her. He continued to ask her this question, and the girl coughed up blood and was a little unprepared for this and did not understand why this was happening. Rain smiled and told the young man that she was fine and not to worry. Although she told him this, anyone who saw such a picture would not be happy and would distrust such words. The girl wiped off the blood and thought that fortunately her body was healthy and this was just a side effect of nightmares. The heroine even went to the doctor to find out if everything was fine, and there she was told that she did not even have a hint of any disease and she would live for another 1,000 years. Nevertheless, she was only nauseous from eating nightmares. Fortunately, at least she was given a good healthy body. Machmund once again asked if she was absolutely fine. She said yes and patted him and thanked him. The next day she received a notification about a meeting with a boy in the guild. The girl, as always, quickly made him fall asleep, and he lay on her shoulder comfortably for sure. While he slept, she thought about the fact that this was only their third meeting, and the boy looked as if he had already gotten used to her, because at least he just fell asleep on her shoulder. And before that, there was still a bit of awkwardness between them when she mentioned it. And this time, the one from whom she died every time and whom she was always afraid of just slept on her like a cat. Then the boy opened his eyes and she asked if he had already woken up. He silently looked at the girl and she wondered why he was looking at her so intently. He took her face and said that the color of her eyes did not look very healthy. And he worriedly asked if something had happened in her life. Care was visible in his actions and look. Rain got nervous because she didn't think it would be possible that he would care about her, the Janin she knows in her head. It didn't make sense. But after some time, she replied that she just didn't sleep well today, and he offered to sleep with him then, but she refused. The heroine understood that she was tired because of him, but decided that it was better for him not to know this and to take care of himself. She then looked at his hands and remembered that last time she was wondering where they were from, so she decided to ask him now. He hid them a little and explained that he ties himself up while sleeping. The girl did not quite understand what he was at first. The boy went on to say that he could kill someone in his sleep, but with the girl's help, he felt better. She became sadder because she realized that although she was helping him with a certain number of nightmares, she couldn't take them away completely, and said she would do everything in her power. And she was also upset that she could not take care of her own life, which did not even depend on her. When she left the guild, the girl said that they could meet more often if he wanted. He agreed, and said that he would also like to meet her more often. That girl exhaled with the understanding that he is the emperor and he probably has a lot of work, and it is difficult to go outside the palace. Then the boy mentioned that it was time for the ball, but he offered her to go with him to him. She was very surprised, because who had not called her there already, honestly? It was already her 4th invitation to the ball, but she replied that she was busy, and unfortunately could not make it. Janin looked upset, and the girl did not understand if he really wanted her to come to the ball, and where he learned to make such cute points. She refused and offered an alternative, namely to go together to the festival of the day of the founding of the empire, and thereby interested him. He looked at her and she added that, of course, if he has time, and if not, she understands everything. In fact, the girl did not think that he would really have time to go to such festivals. But the boy replied that of course he would inform her and contact her, because of which the girl fell into shock, and she thought that the tongue was her enemy. She then said goodbye to Yanin and went back to her place to prepare for the same ball, and since she had no choice but to go there, she had to make sure everything went smoothly. And then she remembered that she didn't even have a suitable dress for such an important and crowded event. Therefore, in the end, she chose Solani as her escort, and she is only glad. They went to Solani's room, and the girl was even surprised that they did not shout at her but addressed her with a smile. The girl chose shoes and dresses for the heroine and asked how she liked them, and Rain answered that everything was beautiful. Then they told her to try on the dress, and she thought about the fact that she would not want to catch the eyes of the other brothers because one was strange and the other was noisy, and decided that it would be better to wear her bandage after all. And luckily for her, Solani had a mask that she didn't like, and the girl just fit it to cover her eye. Another problem that remained was whether Janine would recognize her at the ball. She was quite worried about it. Although she used a wig and a bandage, she was still worried about it. Moreover, the emperor did not know what she usually looked like, so she had no reason to be nervous. Solani tried on the dress, and the heroine thought that if she did not catch his eye, everything would be fine. Rain was cheered on, but she was sad that she couldn't even go there with her true hair color, and that she had to make great sacrifices to survive. She really hoped that everything would go well and without difficulties. After a few days, the ball finally came, and Solani finally admitted that she did not like the fact that she had to go with the girl, and told her not to embarrass her. The heroine agreed, but she herself did not understand why she was called to accompany her. She somehow did not agree. And overall, the girl looked amazing. She had a beautiful hairdo and a gorgeous pink dress, along with matching accessories and a mask that perfectly hid the girl's eye. The same long-awaited evening of the ball began. Also, the girl said to address her informally today, although she didn't like it, but they came from the same family, as it were. The heroine was already nervous and hoped that everything would be fine. I would also be nervous in her place. Afterwards, they arrived in a carriage to the magnificent and luxurious Blue Palace. The heroine saw him so close for the first time and realized that he was incredibly big and was a little fascinated by it. Then the girls finally entered the hall and all wore masks, so it was difficult to understand who was who. But even considering that most of them had their faces half covered, she was able to recognize some of them. Solani asked the girl to behave normally, naturally, and not to be nervous, and began to show where everyone was the first to show her the Hedis family. Rain nodded, but understood that there was no point in saying it, since she wouldn't remember it anyway. But there was a person there who was hard not to recognize, namely Emperor Janin, who was sitting bored on the throne. The girl noticed that he looked magnificent even in this condition and after the nightmares. And it was clear from his disgruntled aura that he himself did not really want to be here and was arrested. The girl also remembered that it was at this ball that the main character of the novel appeared, whom everyone then began to admire. But in previous lives it was not a masquerade ball. In the novel, at some point, one of the girls fainted there, and Stella, who had the ability to heal, helped that girl, and all the attention was on her. This was the first time she had used her abilities in public, and thereby attracted the interest of Emperor Yanin. He was most interested in the healing power of the girl, and he stood in front of her and the girl who had fallen and was being held by Stella. After a moment of thought, Rain thought that it really could have been love at first sight and let out a breath. But right now she didn't understand if it was Jainin who acted as the main male character or maybe someone else. But her compliment was biting her nails and staring at something. Solani definitely didn't look good and was very nervous about something. Her face changed a lot. Rain asked if everything was okay with her and did not understand what she was looking at so intently. However, looking there, she saw Cloud with his 2 sons up next to the Emperor. This was not a good sign. She thought about how they approached the Emperor so nonchalantly and wondered why they decided to go there without a third in the form of Solani. Therefore, the heroine decided to tell the other that maybe she should also go to them. The same, in response, started shouting, asking why they didn't even call her. She didn't understand why they did that and just threw her away, clearly being displeased with it, and not in vain. Afterwards, Rain thought it was because she was absorbing Jane's nightmares, and that caused Solani to not be able to display her abilities as they should. Suddenly, the girl turned to the heroine and began to ask if she knew anything about it, but the answer was that she did not understand what it was about. Solani rephrased and once again asked if the girl did not know for sure that her father could talk to her brothers. She was answered in the negative. But this answer was not enough for her, so she continued to try to find out something and threatened that if Rain lied, she would not leave her alone. The heroine replied that she wasn't lying, but the other one had better lower her tone a little since she had already screamed. Although everyone and hers had their faces covered at the ball, Solani kept calling her name, thereby making other people interested in them, so she asked her cousin to calm down. She was already in the wrong state, so she only got angrier and shouted at the girl even more. She then shouted and asked if she thought that she could point to her only, because her father began to show her a little more attention. The other stood in shock from these shouts and all the looks. She didn't understand why she screamed like that, especially at her. Let's say it wasn't very pleasant. Having calmed down a little, her cousin said that she would go out to get some fresh air, and that she should stay there and give her glass of wine. Saying that she can drink her wine there and heading for the exit, Rain tried to stop her. But the girl had already left, and she herself did not understand why and left her alone like that. It was mean. At first she shouted at the whole hall, and then decided to leave her alone with all these people and looks. Now everyone was looking at her, but she tried not to pay attention to it and began to quietly drink the wine that was given to her. Rain hoped that no one would approach her and not want to start a conversation because that would be terrible. And she also had the feeling that Jainin was looking her way, though it was hard to tell for sure. Nevertheless, the girl began to get nervous that he would not recognize her and that she should probably go somewhere else. But just as she wanted to do it, the world began to spin in front of her, which was not in their plans. Her body stopped obeying and she fell to the ground, breaking the glass, and could not understand what had happened. People around started talking about help and that someone had fainted and didn't know what to do. The girl did not understand why in this harsh world, people could only make a fuss but not help because everyone looked but did nothing. She had a headache and was trying not to die now, but finally Stella came to her and put her on her lap. Rain mentioned that according to the plot of the novel, the main character, Stella Bless, helped a girl who had lost consciousness. That's why she came to help right now and asked if the heroine was okay. She was not very well and did not understand why the girl who fainted suddenly became her own person. Then darkness and memories of the fact that the heroine agreed to go to the ball where Solani shouted at her and began to open her eyes a little. Afterwards, Stella and the memories of the wine and looks in their direction were seen leaving the girl alone and finally drinking the same wine. Then she suddenly woke up not understanding what happened and where she is. I can't judge. Stella spoke and said that it was good that she woke up and that she was worried about her, but Stella herself had a light plaid and a blue dress. Rain thought at that time that the girl's hand was warm and that she felt much better than before. She felt like she was going to cry, soon as she hadn't felt such gentle touches in a long time. As she lay there thinking about her abilities, the girl caressed her gently. Also in this novel, the healing ability was controlled only by the main character, who at the moment explained that this room was given to them by the palace and she can freely rest here. Rain quickly thanked her and said she was feeling better, while the other replied that she didn't do anything like that. After that, she decided to introduce herself, saying that her name was Stella, and asked what the name of the lying girl was. The heroine was about to answer when she suddenly realized that she could see everything around her too well. She quickly realized that she was not wearing a mask and began to hide her eye while the other looked at her in surprise. Until then, she panicked because she did not take a simple bandage, thinking that a mask would be enough. Stella understood that the girl was most likely looking for a mask and handed it to her. Rain thanked her and hoped that she did not have time to see her eye. The main character of the novel decided to find out if there is something wrong with her eye that she hides it like that. As it turned out, she still managed to see the pupil and hypothesized that she thought it was from the Hart's family, while the other one was already tying the mask. Then another guy came in and said that she must be the same nice daughter Cloud had introduced her to 7 years ago. He looked at her strangely, and Rain wondered if she had done something strange and did not believe that Stella was not alone there. Keel was a young master from the wealthy Spade family, or simply Spades, known for their knightly skills, and was one of the male characters in the novel. Here, Stella interceded for her and told the boy that he was scaring the girl and asked him to lighten the expression. He agreed. But the girl noticed that they had a strange relationship. Rain saw the main characters so close for the first time, and if you think about it, in the novel they were in love with each other. These doves looked cute, and even in the past she wanted to scream for them to confess their feelings to each other. However, she was not very comfortable in this situation, so she tried to think of a way to quietly get out of it. Stella decided to inquire whether the girl was really from the Hart's family. She had nowhere to run, so she admitted that it was so, and Keel was right and sincerely thanked Stella. And she also had the feeling that her savior was nervous, not knowing if Stella was somehow related to her family. She was answered with a smile that Keel actually brought her here, and she was just there. She now thanked both of them for their help today, and said that she hoped that if she hadn't caused them too much trouble, she was told that everything was fine. Suddenly, the girl noticed a handkerchief with a red stain and thought that she had accidentally stained it with wine and it looked expensive. But after taking it, she started apologizing again, asking if it was because of her. Rain said she would fix everything. She was told that everything was fine, but she said that she would buy it back because she already caused them inconvenience. Stella was like a ray of sunshine and said that there was no need to worry about such little things and that they were very glad to be able to help her. Then there was a love scene when the guy poked the girl's cheek and told her not to smile like that, and she blushed. She asked why and if it looked strange. He replied that it was not the case, and the girl just watched their interaction, thinking that it was young people. Afterwards, she was told that if she was better, they would leave, and in order not to overwork herself, Rain thanked them and said goodbye to them. She waved with a smile and breathed a sigh of relief because she was already starting to worry about what caused their quarrel. And immediately after they left, she thought about who had put something in her wine, whether it could have been Solani or someone else. Because she had little time to prepare, she lost her focus, but first she had to get back to the ball. That's what she thought, but it was already night outside and she couldn't find where to go, so she wandered for 10 minutes. But she was never able to find her way back to the hall. As she left, she complained that she didn't think she would get topographical cretinism at such an age, but here she is. Also, there was not a single soul around who could help her, which greatly disappointed her, and it would not have been. If she had known it would be like this, she would have gone with Stella and Kael, but she was stuck and sad about it. But then she pulled herself together and calmed down, and finally heard the voices of some people. The servants held the emperor and tried to calm him down while he was emanating a dark aura and nightmares. Rain didn't understand what was going on here, but she reacted quickly and realized that the situation looked very serious. Taking a step, the girl saw a syringe with a sedative and picked it up, realizing that he needed it. Not long after, she was approached and asked who she was and what she was doing here, and she jumped up. She was told to leave quickly, but Janin decided otherwise and attacked her by throwing her on the floor. He would have a conscience, she was there only recently. The man began to strangle her, although it was clear from his eyes that he did not want this, but his body did not obey, and the girl understood that the nightmares completely absorbed him, and it was incredibly serious. They continued to strangle her, and Rain thought that this would not be the first death at his hands. Even after so many times, the girl was no longer afraid at all. Maybe it was because she was used to her own death, but she was able to put her hand out a little. But she took his face, telling him that this was not what he wanted to do, but he was silently looking at her. Then she kissed me and sincerely asked her to finally come to her senses and end it all. After that, the heroine grabbed a syringe and quickly and sharply injected a sedative into his leg, and he did not have time to react. Janan froze for a moment and immediately fell into a blackout on the girl. She was glad that he was able to immediately come to his senses and not actually kill her. When she did this, other knights ran to her asking if everything was okay with her. The girl had already forgotten about their existence. Then she raised her head a little and put on an innocent face, saying that she did not know what had happened and had simply lost her way to the ballroom, and thus ended up here. A well-behaved rabbit, a knight asked if she was absolutely normal, but she thought only that he reminded her of someone. But she quickly realized that he was similar to Mahmud, even too similar. He asked what family the girl was from, but she ignored this question and started asking her own. And thinking about Mahmud, she asked the knight if he sometimes had a younger brother. He was silent for a moment. In her opinion, they were already very similar, but to Rain's surprise, the boy answered in the negative and surprised the girl. But he explained that the concept of family does not exist for him, and he was alone all his life. And then he suspiciously asked why the heroine was asking him all this, and for what purpose. Rain explained that she just knew someone like him, so she decided to ask. But she got nervous, wondering if it sounded too pushy, and decided that she better get out of there. Therefore, she corrected her appearance, apologized, and said that it was time for her to go, but he began to ask her to wait. But the girl had already left, almost like Cinderella, and he continued to stand like that. After a long wandering around the palace, the heroine was finally able to stumble upon someone, namely Salani, near the carriage. She was already glad that she was not abandoned alone, but there was another problem. Salani spoke, and said that with the loss of consciousness and the wandering, it made her blush. Nevertheless, she stopped screaming, and they both began to get into the carriage one by one. Rain tried to explain, saying that it was her first ball, and she must have been nervous. Salani even smiled, and taking off her mask, replied that it was terrible, but she should be grateful that she was able to get here at all. But in the girl's head, there were many questions about the poisoned wine, whether Salani was the target, or there was no clear thinking about it, and why she suffered as a result. One option was that it was arranged by the Bless family to reveal her abilities to everyone. Even such little things could be important. And in general, such difficulties that she experiences in the novel should not happen to the character of the mask, which the girl actually was. In reality, Rain was extremely tired of all this. She just wanted to survive, but for some reason it was too hard. When she returned to the palace, she wanted to go home and finally have a real rest and sleep. A lot had happened today. At least Janan almost went crazy with nightmares. And she had to return the money for Stella's handkerchief because it looked expensive. When suddenly they began to confidently approach her and later began to speak, asking if it was true that she had lost consciousness at the ball. The girl already recognized this voice. It was Snow, from whose presence she shook, and he asked if she was normal as always with a smile positive. Then he asked how she was feeling and whether she had a temperature and wanted to check her with his hand. But because of the girl's fear of him, she reflexively pushed his hand away and generally looked scared, and so much had happened. And then he too. The boy was surprised by her actions, and Rain quickly replied that she was fine, just tired. She apologized for pushing his hand away, and now she was also worried about hitting her hard, but she didn't understand why he was doing such strange things at all. He rubbed his reddened hand and replied that he was glad that the girl did not get sick and felt sorry for the fact that she treats people who are worried about her like that. It is pitiful. It worked, and now a burden appeared on the girl's soul, and she didn't know how to answer him at all, so she once again apologized to Snow. He replied that she could not worry, and the girl could not help but worry after all this. The girl kept apologizing, but in her head she didn't understand what it was for her, and she just wanted to go and rest. The guy looked at her silently. But then he asked a brilliant question, which was whether she sincerely apologizes, and looked at her intently. She had no choice, and although she didn't want to say it, she had to, so the girl confirmed that it was sincere and from the bottom of her heart. He smiled, and Rain was already starting to get angry and did not understand why he was smiling like that and wanted him to stop. After that, he put her against the wall and told her to pay attention to him then. Rain was shocked by such a statement and asked what he was all about. For today the limit of strange things was already exhausted, and she did not want anything else to appear. Snow continued asking if the girl wanted to atone for her guilt in front of him. She blushed a little and thought that she did not feel that guilt so much. But the guy again told her to pay attention to it. He must have an attention deficit. Now we know that the life of a cartoon character is much more difficult and unpredictable than the life of the main characters. In this situation, Rain could only nod, not look into his eyes, and hope for the best. The girl did so, but in her head she incredibly hated him and considered him a jerk. But she was smiling and did not understand why her life was so difficult. She was tired, and there was also a lot of strange things. The next moment, the girl was back in the guild, where she was asked why she was sighing so heavily, and if something had happened, because she looked sad in general. After that, the heroine turned to Botan and said that she had some business, namely whether he knew a jockey from the Imperial Palace named May.